I had meant to do this story earlier than when you're receiving it now, but I forgot to actually press the send button on my app to send it to my DMs to remind myself of the story. But luckily for me, the story didn't come out too long ago, so it's still pretty fresh, but it's really not making a lot of mainstream news. So if you look at this picture, you pretty much know who that is in the middle. That is Lori Loughlin, and those are her two daughters whose names are Olivia Jade and Isabella Rose. And we all know that Lori Loughlin, about a month ago, she was sentenced for her role in the crime. We're just going to call it what it is, a crime, in which she, her husband, Felicity Huffman, and many others have done, trying to get their kids into these high esteemed Ivy League colleges by cheating. Now, Lori Loughlin, she only had to do, I believe, what was it, a month or 2 months or something like that? Something very light-hearted, very slap on the handish and everything like that. But now her daughters have come and spoken out about how they're feeling and how they're dealing with the news with their mother of having to go to prison, even though she's not really going to a real prison, because I did a breakdown of where she's going to be at or where she's at. And trust and believe, she's at a country club. She's at Club Fed. She's basically in the same kind of a facility that Martha Stewart was in when she went to jail, if you want to call it jail. But they basically come out and says that with their mother in jail, it has been a nightmare for them. Oh, really? A nightmare, you say? So it wasn't a nightmare when you knew, because as far as I'm concerned, their daughters knew what their parents were up to. Her and her husband were up to when it came to what they did. But this is a nightmare. Imagine all the kids that wanted to get into these schools but probably couldn't because y'all were the one or the two people that were responsible for keeping them out. What if it was a nightmare for them and they worked hard and, with merit to actually get into these schools but couldn't because they paid their way in or tried to pay their way in? And not just them, but all others that were involved. And speaking of, notice you do not hear a word about this anymore. And I told y'all when they got Lori Loughlin, when she finally came to her senses and decided to plead guilty, they were probably not going to talk about this thing anymore. Not with her, not her husband, not with Felicity Huffman or anyone else that was involved. They were just waiting for her because she was the last big name attached to this scandal. Everyone else is just, I guess you can say, supporting cast that no one cares about or a background actor. Even though it was some pretty big names attached to it, even though those people weren't famous, because Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin were the two main focal points of this entire story. But once they got them, then they weren't going to talk about it anymore. And I was right, because when's the last time you heard about this? Until now. But yeah, her daughters have come out saying that this is such a nightmare. I don't know how. It's not like their mother is going to some hard maximum security prison, even though she should have, and many others should have gone to a prison like that as well. But she's not going anywhere where they're going to hound her about it, anything like that. She's going to be nice and cushy. For all we know, she might be out right now, and we don't know. But I'm going to go ahead and read this article coming from People and see what they're talking about. Lori Loughlin and her husband, fashion designer Massimo Giannulli, are now both in jail for their role in last year's college admission scandal, but a Loughlin source says it's the couple's daughters, YouTube star Olivia Jade Giannulli, aged 21, and Isabella Rose Giannulli, aged 22, who may be struggling the most. I'm curious to know what their so-called struggle is. If it's just not their parents being there, that's not really much of a struggle. Unless they were living off of their parents, which I wouldn't be surprised about. It's just a nightmare for them, the source tells People in this week's issue. They were very upset when they said goodbye to Lori, but to have both of their parents now in prison at the same time is very upsetting. Well, they need to acknowledge the role, like I said, that they played in it as well, because they could have easily told their parents, no, please don't do that. That's not the right thing to do. But as far as I'm concerned, they went along with it because remember those pictures that their dad sent to Rick Singer, the mastermind behind it? They said, take some pictures of them in attire pretending to row. They agreed to do it. They're lucky they're not in jail. But they figure, well, they probably said, oh, they were coerced into doing it. No, these are grown women. They were grown. They were over the age of 18 when they agreed to do it. So they were conscious in their decision making. I don't want to hear none of that coerced crap. Full House star Loughlin, age 56, reported to FCI Dublin in Northern California on October 30th to serve a 2-month sentence after pleading guilty back in May to conspiracy to commit wire and mail fraud. Then on November 19th, Giannulli, age 57, was booked into federal prison in Lompoc near Santa Barbara, where he's serving 5 months on 2 fraud charges. They are beyond worried, the source adds, of Olivia and Isabella. They can't wait to have their mom home in December, though. They try to focus on this. On May 22nd, Loughlin admitted to 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire and mail fraud, while her husband, Massimo Giannulli, pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire and mail fraud and 1 count of honest services wire and mail fraud. The couple was caught up in the college admission scandal in which more than 50 parents allegedly bribed their wealthy kids' ways into prestigious universities. And they love to say that they work for everything. That whole situation right there pretty much blew the lid off of a good chunk of that statement. But then what they tried to do was flip it against the people that had something to say about it and say, well, if you was in that position, you would do the same thing. How do you know that? Not everybody who has money and wealth is as slimy and schemy as the ones that's involved with this. According to the criminal complaint against them, the couple was accused of paying $500,000 to Rick Singer and Key Worldwide Foundation to falsely designate their daughters as recruits to the University of Southern California crew team, even though neither even participated in the sport. Loughlin is expected to be released on December 28th. Though a source tells People she hopes to go home in a few days early before Christmas, while her husband is slated to be freed in April. In the meantime, a legal source says Loughlin is holding up well. She was a little weepy on her first night there, but she pulled herself together quickly. I don't know why she was a little weepy about the whole thing, considering where she's staying at. It says she hasn't had any specific problems and no one is bullying her. I bet they aren't. Like, look at where she's at. Like I said, I did a description of where she was at in a live stream that I did last month when they described what her room looked like. Not the facility itself, but what her room, based on what it described, it sounds like she's staying at a Four Seasons. Are they sure she's not being held at a Four Seasons? It says she's using this time to focus on herself, but she's also interested in hearing the stories of the other inmates, the sources say. She realizes she's no better or no worse than any of them. Lori is resolved to finish her sentence with her head held high. But I bet you if they offered her to go home a few days early, she'll be quick to agree to that. But yeah, like I said, the daughters, those two are lucky they didn't get hit with any charges. Because some of you who are listening to this right now who have been following me with this story, it said that they should have got hit with something. They're lucky they didn't get touched. But I figured they say, well, let's just focus more on their parents because they were the ones that actually agreed to do it. But they played a part because they also agreed to go along with it. They knew they weren't part of that no crew team. And I didn't even know what a crew team was at the time until someone told me it's basically a rowing team. So, yeah, they have nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, it's actual people in jail right now, hardcore prisons, maximum security prisons right now that shouldn't be there for crimes they didn't commit or they got set up and the system got a hold of them. Those are the people who have family on the outside who should be saying it's a nightmare for them. Maybe not only just for them, but a nightmare for their loved ones in prison right now who shouldn't be there. Y'all already know the type of people that I'm talking about. I don't have to go into detail. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a fake outrage, if you want to call it that, or a fake outcry. And they're trying to look and garner sympathy. Let me tell them something right now. Nobody feels sorry for your mother, your father, or you. Nobody. Because as far as I'm concerned, I haven't really come across anybody who does feel sorry for Lori Loughlin. people was actually making fun of her and saying, "Oh, well, there goes her Hallmark checks," because she practically had a contract with Hallmark. Like every year, there would be like some Christmas movie and she would be in it. Not this year, and I don't think any year after that. Now, I'm curious to see what's going to happen to her career after she gets out. Will she still be able to work, or will this be the end of her career? Same thing with Felicity Huffman. Now, Felicity Huffman, she got out after only doing 1.5 weeks. 1.5 weeks. She was supposed to be in it for 2 weeks. She didn't even last 2 weeks. She went in on that, I think, on that Monday and was out that following Wednesday. So I'm curious, is she going to continue to get roles, or is her career done? But we shall see what the future holds. And that goes the same thing if they do voiceover roles too. So we're going to be checking to see if she's still getting parts, because there's black people out here who don't even do an ounce of the stuff that they did or got themselves involved with, and they only get one shot, and then all of a sudden they say these magic words. They're difficult to work with. In case y'all didn't know, if you pay attention to that phrasing, whenever they say a black person is difficult to work with when it comes to acting or the industry, that's their signaling of them about to be blackballed. They did that with Monique, and remember what happened with her. They did that with Wesley Snipes, and look at what happened to him. And so many others. All they got to do is say they're difficult to work with, and that's it. Meanwhile, I've heard stories about Charlize Theron, that chick. They said she was difficult to work with, and she's still working. As problematic as she is, especially in her personal life. I don't have to go into detail about that. Y'all already know. But I'm done with this story right here. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments, and I'll talk to you in the next one.